What if the nations the world counts out, the so-called underdogs, refuse to play the old game? What if they flipped the board entirely, rewriting rules that seemed as old as empire, and proved that the future could belong to those once left at the margins? Imagine the ripples if a single bold move could tilt the balance of global power, not with guns or gold, but with dignity and cotton.
In the heart of West Africa, a new headline emerges. Burkina Faso and Bangladesh, long underestimated by global power brokers, strike a direct deal for cotton. They sidestep the Western brokers who have claimed the lion's share for more than 5 decades. No more crumbs for labor, no more silent exploitation. This is not a plea for aid. It is a partnership forged in resolve, where respect must be earned, not begged for.
The impact is electric and immediate. In Burkina Faso, farmers finally see honest profits for their sweat. In Bangladesh, textile mills secure a steady flow of premium African cotton, bolstering an industry that powers millions of livelihoods. Across continents, boardrooms bristle as old power brokers sense their grip slipping, unable to stop the tide. There is a growing realization that the old rules are being torn up, one bale at a time. This is the Cotton Rebellion, a story far bigger than fabric. It is about dignity reclaimed, independence asserted, and value kept in the hands of those who create it. Two nations stand tall, break the narrative of weakness, and redraw the rules of global trade. Suddenly, the future tilts. The architects of tomorrow are no longer who you expect. And the old cycle, dependency, unfair deals, lost pride, will grind on. But if you look closer, you might see the front lines of a revolution, one that trades in more than profit, but in pride, innovation, and the right to define your own destiny. It all begins in July of 2025, beneath the rising dust of Sahel fields, where the sound of tractors signals the start of something unstoppable. The first whispers of this rebellion are not heard in government halls, but in the villages and mills where lives are transformed. Let's follow the journey from the soil to the factory floor and witness how a single deal can ignite a global movement. For generations, wealth flowed in a single direction, out of Africa's fields and straight into Western pockets. Consider the cotton trade. For decades, powerful nations in Europe and North America bought African cotton for mere pennies. Later, they sold expensive, finished clothing back to Africa and Asia. The story was the same everywhere. Raw goods leaving humble villages, returning as costly imports, and profits always landing far from the soil where cotton first sprouted. Aid and loans arrived, wrapped in smiles but tangled in strings. In Burkina Faso, dependence became routine. Each new loan another invisible chain, each foreign grant a quiet reminder of what could not be done alone. Even in Bangladesh, famed for its textiles, true power rested with distant markets. Western brokers dictated terms, took the largest slice, and left local workers with breadcrumbs. Yet the world rarely saw the quiet strength growing in these places. News only came for famine or disaster, never for the slow-burning ingenuity that took root in fields, or the silent pride building in village co-ops and crowded workshops. Think of the villages in the Kudugu region, where women's collectives learned to manage their own finances despite minimal access to banks, or the small family-run mills on the outskirts of Dhaka, where generations of textile workers passed on their skills in secret, waiting for their moment. Their resilience was unseen, their ambition uncounted by global statistics. Then, in July 2025, the pattern broke. Under the searing sun of Burkina Faso, history's script was torn up, not with a desperate plea, but with a handshake. No more waiting for distant permission or charity. This was a deal struck between equals. It was not a lifeline tossed down by the powerful, but a partnership built on mutual respect. But with change comes risk. Breaking free from old habits means stepping into the unknown, leaving behind the comfort of dependency, and daring to imagine a future built by your own ambition. The cost of doing nothing? A future where agency, pride, and prosperity always belong to someone else. So,
Who dared to light the fuse? Who challenged history and sparked a new era? Meet the force behind this rebellion, Burkina Faso's bold young leader, Ibrahim Traoré. But every revolution needs more than one spark. To understand how this deal was even possible, we have to step inside both Burkina Faso and Bangladesh and discover the hidden forces that set the stage. For example, in Bangladesh, the Rana Plaza disaster of 2013 forced the country's textile industry to confront its reliance on Western buyers and the need for more ethical, equitable supply chains. Meanwhile, in Burkina Faso, local farmers' unions, like the Union Nationale des Producteurs de Coton du Burkina, spent decades building networks of trust and knowledge that could finally be leveraged for a direct partnership. Can a single leader with nothing but vision and a handful of soil truly outwit centuries of global inequality? Ibrahim Traoré believes so. At just 37 years old, he stands as the world's youngest president, refusing to let Burkina Faso survive on the crumbs of richer nations. He is not pleading for aid, he is demanding respect. Instead of exporting raw hope and letting others decide his country's value, Traoré dreams of exporting real worth. His determination lights a fire that leaps far beyond the cotton fields. The Cotton Rebellion launches with a radical promise. Burkina Faso will trade cotton directly with Bangladesh, slicing away the Western middlemen who have long feasted on their labor. This is no simple business move. It is a gauntlet thrown at the old global order, one that has always held these countries back. The deal is refreshingly clear: fair prices, honest partnerships, and no secret strings attached. For farmers like old Madu, change isn't subtle. It thunders in. Instead of waiting for handouts, he watches shiny red tractors roll onto his land, bought with Burkina Faso's own profits. Fertilizer, water pumps, and trustworthy contracts sweep away years of disappointment. For the first time, Madu earns true money for his cotton, and with it, a new pride. He stands taller, no longer forced to swallow whatever price outsiders dictate. His children, once destined to migrate north searching for odd jobs, now see a future at home with the promise of education and stability. Across the sea in Bangladesh, the shift is just as seismic. Lila, a textile worker, has always been invisible, a mere gear in the global fashion industry. Now, she is not just a laborer. She is a respected partner in a South-South alliance. Her team receives cotton straight from Burkina Faso, avoiding costly brokers and broken supply lines. For the first time, Lila feels her work is honored, valued for collaboration, not just profit. Both Madu and Lila sense they are part of something historic, a network where knowledge and ambition flow both ways. Lila's factory, once forced to cut corners because of slim profit margins, invests in safer working conditions and pays workers a living wage. The ripple effect is real. This is bigger than economics. It is a battle for dignity and self-determination. If it fails, another generation will bow to the old rules, selling their future for scraps. But if it succeeds, the Cotton Rebellion becomes a roadmap, an invitation to other nations longing to seize their power and rewrite their stories. As the first bales of cotton travel across continents, the stakes sharpen. This is no longer about deals or dollars. It is about who shapes tomorrow. The Cotton Rebellion radiates outward, transforming economies, communities, and the very idea of freedom. But not everyone welcomes this new order. Shadows gather as entrenched powers plot to defend the old system at any cost. Western brokers, facing the loss of easy profits, begin to lobby for renewed trade restrictions and tariffs. International financial institutions warn of instability, echoing the language used during the oil crisis of the 1970s, when OPEC nations refused to be exploited any longer. The media, too, is divided. Some outlets praise the movement, while others warn of economic nationalism. The stakes, it seems, are not only economic, but narrative. Who gets to tell the story of progress? What happens when hope is poured into concrete and rebellion is woven into classrooms? In Burkina Faso, the answer runs along new roads, cut across the land by local hands.
These are not charity projects stamped with foreign flags. They are born from sweat and strategy, funded by cotton profits once siphoned away, now fueling local wages. For the first time, a mother in Bonny can reach the market before noon. A child in Fada can get to a clinic before a fever becomes a funeral. Each mile of red earth draws villages closer, not just to each other, but to the world beyond. But the deepest transformation is less visible. For decades, hope meant escape. A suitcase, a perilous crossing, a life rebuilt far from home. That is shifting. Fatimata once longed for Europe. Now she leads a crew installing solar pumps in her own hometown. Her ambition is not to flee, but to build. Across Burkina Faso and Bangladesh, young people like her see the horizon not as a border to cross, but as a frontier to claim. The rebellion has become a blueprint for belonging. At the National Agronomy Civic Academy, thousands of students gather, not just to learn farming, but to master nation building. Their curriculum is a mix of water management, entrepreneurship, civic duty, and collective action. Textbooks are filled with stories of local heroes, not distant saviors. In every classroom, debate crackles, not about what outsiders will deliver, but about what these students will create together. From rebellion, a new syllabus emerges, one that teaches not survival, but sovereignty. This new spirit leaps across borders. Student exchanges between Bangladesh and Burkina Faso are not rare ceremonies, but routine. Young engineers design water-saving technology in Ouagadougou and Dhaka, swapping code and ideas. Disaster response teams run joint drills, sharing lessons from floods and droughts. With every handshake and shared project, trust grows. Each success deepens the ties, forging an alliance that is both practical and visionary. The creative spark of the Cotton Rebellion does not stop at customs lines. Free Thread, a fashion brand co-owned by both nations, launches its first collection in Paris and Berlin. The clothes sell out in days. European shoppers crave not just style, but the story sewn into every seam. Fairness, partnership, dignity. For the first time, luxury is not defined by European labels, but by Southern solidarity. The world's appetite shifts from status to substance. This is reminiscent of how Japanese brands in the 1960s broke into Western markets, changing consumer perceptions and forcing established fashion houses to rethink their own values. Word spreads. In villages from Ghana to Vietnam, leaders and dreamers pay attention. They see that independence is not nostalgia, but a toolkit. The model can be copied for rice, cocoa, tea, even technology. South-South cooperation sheds its old slogans and becomes a spark. What once seemed unlikely now inspires new roads, new schools, and new ambition across continents. Historical parallels abound. In Latin America during the 1960s and 70s, countries like Brazil and Argentina tried, with varying degrees of success, to build alliances outside of traditional Western dominance, trading oil, grain, and manufactured goods with neighbors and fellow developing nations. Those efforts stumbled on weak infrastructure and outside pressure. The difference now? Technology, and a new generation willing to challenge the old playbook. Yet the stakes could not be higher. If this momentum falters, old dependencies will creep back in, hope fades, and another generation faces the question, is home just a place to endure, not to dream? But if this movement grows, something else is possible. Children will inherit not only the memory of struggle, but the right to define their own future on their own terms. But none of this happened by accident. Beneath every victory, there is a blueprint, one drawn in secret, then delivered on the world stage. What are the practical steps that made this revolution real? First, local cooperatives in Burkina Faso pooled their resources to buy new machinery, using microloans managed not by foreign banks but by village councils. Second, trade ministries in both countries invested in digital tracking systems, ensuring every bale of cotton could be traced from field to mill. Third, education campaigns taught farmers and factory workers alike about their rights, contract terms, and how to negotiate fair deals.
What if the true revolution isn't in parliaments or presidential palaces, but in the tiny, daily acts you barely notice? Who you trade with, what you value, whose story you repeat. That's the quiet battlefield where the Cotton Rebellion is making history. This is no ordinary treaty between distant capitals. It's a rewrite of the global script where each handshake, each transaction becomes an act of power and defiance. In West Africa, direct trade and equal partnerships are flipping the old game. Now, nations set their own prices, and even more, they reclaim their stories. Gone are the invisible middlemen siphoning off riches. Instead, a deal between Burkina Faso and Bangladesh carries more meaning than a dozen foreign contracts ever could. Across sunburned fields and restless towns, a new generation is stepping up. Young founders, barely out of their teens, build apps to trace every bale, every franc, every kilo. With nothing but a phone and resolve, they ensure no one is shortchanged and every harvest gets counted. Think of Awa, a 19-year-old coder from Bobo Dioulasso, who created a blockchain app that allows farmers to independently verify payments, reducing corruption and boosting trust across the supply chain. Stroll through a village at dawn. You'll see schoolgirls in crisp uniforms sewn from local cotton. These aren't just clothes. They're badges of pride. Every thread says, our land, our labor, our beauty. Every stitch dares the world. We did this ourselves. These uniforms, once an unaffordable luxury, are now distributed free to local schools, funded entirely by cotton profits. An echo of how community schools in Kerala, India, used cooperative profits to provide meals and supplies for every student. Technology is their shield. Blockchain and smart tags make every step, from farm to factory, fully transparent. Buyers in Dhaka know the origin of every bale and the exact sum paid to the farmer. Here, fairness is not a slogan. It is hard-coded into every transaction. Similar systems have been used in the coffee industry in Colombia, where farmers' incomes rose by more than 20% after digital traceability eliminated middlemen. This movement grows quietly, but quickly. Mali, Benin, Chad, nations once sidelined, are joining in. Even giants like India, Turkey, and Egypt are watching, eager to tap into this new model. Each new partner brings fresh ideas, stronger bargaining power, and a louder voice in the world market. In a summit held in Addis Ababa, representatives from 16 African and Asian nations sign a memorandum to explore direct trade in other sectors, from cashew nuts to solar panels. The Cotton Rebellion is more than commerce. It is a blueprint for reclaiming everything that matters. Food grown at home, technology tailored to local needs, dignity restored through every deal, and a future owned by those who shape it. Practical steps abound. Rural banks offer microloans at fair rates. Women's cooperatives manage local cotton gins, and universities open new programs in agricultural science and ethical trade. Each initiative builds resilience, turning short-term gains into lasting change. But the risk is real. If people and nations look away, they lose more than money. They surrender dignity, independence, and the chance to inspire others. The moment demands a choice. Will you let outsiders write your story or seize the pen for yourself? What does this revolution look like, lived? Picture this. A country's leader, shoulder to shoulder with workers, beside a shipping container brimming with hope. Not just hope for one nation, but for all who are ready to defy the old rules and imagine something bigger. Imagine a festival in Ouagadougou, where farmers from across the Sahel gather to celebrate their first fully independent harvest, their laughter and music echoing across the plains. Or a classroom in Chittagong, where students video chat with their peers in Didougou, trading stories and dreams. The world is watching. The next move belongs to you, and to anyone bold enough to change the pattern. Will you choose to wear the old story, or will you help weave a new one? Every thread of cotton, from the fields of Burkina Faso to the mills of Bangladesh, now holds a challenge to reclaim what was always ours. This is not just about fabric, or exports, or a single deal. It is about dignity, self-determination, and the courage to question the rules the world once forced upon us. For countless generations, the story was written elsewhere. Others set the price, dictated the terms, and measured our worth in fractions and statistics. But now, in sunlit fields once marked by struggle, hope is taking root. Tractors and machines move not as charity, but as proof of what our hands can achieve and own. The Cotton Rebellion is more than a headline. It is a movement daring to stitch new patterns into the global fabric. Burkina Faso and Bangladesh now stand eye to eye, refusing the middleman's leash, turning so-called underdogs into architects of their own destinies. When leaders listen to their land and their people invest sweat and vision, the old empires of extraction begin to tremble. This is the spark, but the stakes reach far beyond one transaction. What if the next handshake, the next act of solidarity, echoes across continents? What if Africa and Asia do not just make the news, but write a new order, where future profits and pride flow to those once locked outside the room? Your future, your pride, your agency, these are what hang in the balance. To choose the old story is to accept a world forever tilted, forever unjust. To join this movement is to seize your voice, your stake, and your legacy. A legacy your children could inherit with their heads held high. The Cotton Rebellion asks, will you watch history from the sidelines, or will you help shape what comes next? The choice is not only for presidents or farmers, but for everyone hungry for dignity and change. This is more than a chapter in a textbook. It is a chance to stand for something real, to say, we are enough, we are ready, and we will not wait for permission to build the world we deserve. And so, as the dust settles on a new day in Burkina Faso, and the looms begin to spin in Bangladesh, the question is not whether the world will notice, but how long it will take to catch up. Will your community, your country, your family be part of this new pattern? Or will you cling to an old tapestry, fraying at every edge? The choice is collective and urgent. From the smallest village cooperative to the largest national assembly, from the hands that plant the seeds to those that weave the threads, the Cotton Rebellion is not just theirs, it is yours if you dare to claim it. As history has shown, from the movements for independence in India to the civil rights struggles in the United States, the world changes when ordinary people refuse to accept the old rules. Now, a new page is turning in Africa and Asia. The pen is in your hands. Choose wisely. The next generation is watching and waiting for a story worth inheriting.